All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the first recording we have of our X's and O's curriculum for the Lakers Exceptionalism podcast. I am Tim, you know me, Graduates Make Basketball, and we are going through our first introductory session. This is one that we did live, and I recorded the audio but not the video, so I'm re-recording the whole thing. It'll be a little bit different here compared to live. There's not going to be any Q&A. We're not going to do the quizzes. I'm not going to, pull up the word cloud or things like that. So it'll be a little bit different. Obviously, that live experience will be better. It'll be more enriching, more interactive, but this should be really good too. And hopefully, teaches you what we went over in that first session. And it really is introductory stuff. Before we open up Fast Draw, which is where we diagram plays as coaches, before we pull up any clips of the Lakers, any screenshots, before we go over any of the real core concepts, let's start off by talking about film and watching film versus watching games live. Because, I love watching games live. I've had experiences on the sideline coaching, at home, watching games on TV, watching games on my laptop, my phone, sitting in the stands, sitting, courtside, or sitting in the lower bowl, sitting in the upper bowl. I've been all over the place. And, I'm the same person. I think I process things about the same, whether or not it's live or on a screen, but there are some built-in benefits to rewatching games. And when I talk about watching film, that's different from watching a game live, whether in person or on TV. Watching film is, after a game, the emotion removed from the game, you are going over clips of the game, generally to try to learn something or, see what you missed watching live. And you have the opportunity when you're watching film to rewind, which is, a real key thing here. Being able to rewind is important because there's a lot going on a play. There's what's happening on ball. There's what's happening off ball. Defensively, there are all sorts of rotations and technique things. Maybe there's a really cool set that's happening that has a bunch of motion going on. You want to rewind and see it again and make sure you didn't miss anything. Make sure you understood exactly what was happening. Being able to go in slow motion is really nice, especially when there's you're trying to see if there was a foul or not, or you're trying to figure out, okay, there's this 3-man gaggle action weak side, in the moment. If we slow it down a bit, how is the defense reacting and where is the right read? So, these players, they process so quickly and make these fantastic passing, playmaking reads and scoring reads. Sometimes it's good to slow it down on our end and be able to really definitively say, okay, this was, what should have happened. So that's really nice. In that same vein, going fast forward is really convenient. And here, partially if you're trying to look at a specific player or you're looking for a specific set or you're looking for 2-3 defense or something, if you need to skip through without, go a little fast, but not too fast, or not completely skipping plays where you might miss something you want to see, being able to go a little bit fast and fast forward, time and a half speed, 2 times speed. If you're, I'm only looking for post-ups. This was really helpful last year when I was logging the Lakers post offense against help. I didn't want to completely skip plays because then I could miss those post-ups happening. I had to wait and, go fast until I saw a post up. And then, all right, now I'm going to go real time, normal speed and see how the Lakers approach this. So that is just more of out of convenience is really helpful. I'd say also watching on ball versus off ball. Generally, when you watch games, when anyone watches games, me or, just pick a random person at a bar or at home watching on TV, you're mostly going to be watching on ball, which is why we tend to notice things like Avery Bradley's on ball defense being really disruptive. He's, really in your face compared to like a guy like Austin Reeves, who is very, very good on ball, but he's not as in your face. Maybe notice it a little bit less. Or rotations off ball. Some guys are really good, some guys are really bad, but when you're watching mostly what's happening on ball, you're gonna miss how good or poor someone is at those things, or if there's a set play happening. And we'll hear the Lakers broadcasters do this. I'm sure other broadcasters do as well. They'll say, "Oh, LeBron's just dribbling the air out of the ball. He's kind of waiting. He's watching. He's taking his time." In reality, he's not just wasting time. He might be standing there dribbling while there's a flex cut or a pin down or a flare screen or something's happening on the weak side. He's reading it as the playmaker and deciding whether or not to pass to it. So being able to not just see him as someone standing around, but see him and then notice off ball what's going on, over time you'll get better at recognizing. And I think I've at the point where I'm recognizing a lot of what's happening in game as it's happening, but still you're going to miss things. So being able to watch on film is really important. And ask me, ask your favorite X's and O's person, ask a coach, go talk to someone who's going to be honest with you and, worth their shit. They're going to tell you that they see so much more after watching film than they do watching live, which is why from a coaching perspective, if you just lost a tough game, you generally try to not, be going after guys and trying to coach them up about mistakes. Oh, you did a really poor job off ball, or we need to work on this or that. Because a lot of times your perspective will change once you end up going and watching that film. And there have been times where I thought a zone was a 3-2 and it was a 2-3. Or I completely missed a play that was happening. Or there are things that no matter how often you do this or how much you dedicate yourself to this, there will be things that you don't see until you watch on a rewatch. So getting that opportunity to catch what you missed and see those, 2, 5, 10, 20 times more than what you did at first is really important. Emotion is a big piece of this. In the moment, there's a lot going on in your head if you're rooting for a team, especially if you're just a neutral observer, maybe a little bit less so. But as a Lakers fan, watching a Lakers game, there's emotion involved, and that can take my focus away a bit from paying attention to how a guy is sinking or filling on the weak side or something like that. So, removing the emotion of the game can help you see more clearly of what's going on. And then just focusing in on one guy. This is something that during the course of a game, I wouldn't recommend doing this with any regularity, but you can, I suppose. But if you just say, all right, I want to watch Avery Bradley's off-ball defense or LeBron James's off-ball defense, if you're going to do a real good job at that, you're going to miss a lot else of what is happening, for the rest of the court. So doing that after on film is much more convenient. It's easy to fast forward, rewind, find the clips that they're in the game, look at the rotation timeline, say, all right, I need to look from the 12-minute mark to the 6-minute mark. Little things like that. It's just more efficient. When you're watching live, enjoy the game. But understand watching the film afterwards can add a lot of value for these ways and enable you to see more that you didn't see previously. And I mean, neither are good or bad per se, but it's good to get that full picture if you want to, really be saying this player played well or played poorly, especially when there's so much to be seeing. And maybe a guy, for example, Avery Bradley last night against Orlando in the second quarter was not good at the point of attack. In the third quarter was great at the point of attack. But if you're only paying attention to it for a little bit and then your focus shifts elsewhere, you might build that perspective up that this guy was bad. And then he changes his play and you weren't able to adjust with that. So film is good. Want to watch film wherever you can. The NBA.com/stats website, you can go to different player pages and look at all of their shots or their turnovers or their assists, or you can find for specific games, they've got film where you can click on it and see. Basically, you can rewatch the game with some of these capabilities. Now, if you have Instat or Synergy access, that's even better. You're able to say, all right, I want to look at LeBron James's post-ups or his post-ups where he shot a jump shot or a hook shot, or I want to watch defensive possessions that where Trevor Ariza was on the court or things like that. So the degree of technology available to you can dictate how convenient you're able to watch film, but just in general, taking the time to watch that film can add a lot of value, which is why a lot of times you'll see, after games, instead of hopping on to Spaces, I'll be watching film and tweeting out videos of film because I'm trying to get the full picture before really commenting or podcasting and anytime I am speaking immediately after the game, there's that caveat of, all right, this might change tomorrow when I'm watching film. And I'm sure it is for the Lakers too. When Frank is on, Frank Force One on the Lakers plane flying back to LA, he's seeing things that he didn't notice in game. This is just for everyone. So those are some ways the film can be really helpful. I want to show you a couple plays here and just ask you, what do you see? So we've got Lakers, Nuggets. I'll play this one out. Okay, so there's a lot that happens on this play, but it can also seem like there isn't much that happens. Dribble, pass, pass. Guy takes his time, looking around, I'll just shoot a jumper. But there's a whole lot happening here. We've got an immediate flare screen here, which Russ is able to get around. A dribble handoff that the Lakers switch. And as they're switching this, Avery Bradley, he's ready to sink down. And we see Malik Monk pointing, letting him know, hey, you need to be ready in case there's a slip here to the rim. So he's ready to go that way. Monk's ready to go this way. We see that. We see Monk back up. Okay, LeBron's back in front. They're back with their guys. There's a post feed. And then we see another situation here. We've got some four bodies together over on this side. And then on the weak side, we've got a flare screen with the shooter going to the corner. Lakers switch it. It's negated, taken care of. And then finally we see that jump shot. So there's more that can happen on a play that just watching live when you only have one chance to see it, sometimes you'll miss things. And this is why, I loved my old apartment setup. I'm in a house now, but a couple apartments ago where I had two TVs, one right above the other, and I'd watch Lakers games with one of them on like a 10-second delay. So I'd get my own instant replay because it's really easy to miss things. So here's another play. Let's see what's going on here. All right, so you might just see this as Austin Reeves getting popped in the face as he does. Boom, right there, in a foul. But there's a whole lot going on in this play. We see a drive. Ariza gets beat a little bit, and watch Malik Monk rotates over, and THT rotates down, and they're ready for a kick out. Okay, the drive's cut off. You see THT rotate back up, Monk rotate back over on the kick out. Another drive, and same thing. They're ready to rotate and help at the rim. And ultimately, the foul gets called and drawn, but just some of that off-ball rotating. If you're trying to comment and say, oh, you know what, THT rotated well or didn't rotate well this game, here were two chances that he did what he was supposed to do. Same thing with Monk, where you didn't really have an opportunity to notice it if you're just paying attention to the ball. And that's not bad. It's just me trying to articulate how watching the film afterwards can really be value add. When you watch games, I think it's really important as you're learning and still me now, try to figure out what are they trying to do? And then why are they trying to do it? And ask yourself, does it make sense? Let's watch this play and see if we can decipher that. Nuggets offensive possession. All right, so there's a breakdown, there's a bucket, and a pet peeve of mine is you'll go on Twitter and you'll find coaches that'll draw up plays and they'll say, here's a play. All right, why? Explain to me, why what's happening here is good and why I would want to use it or why these teams used it. So on this play, what we get is we've got a horn set up with two guys at the elbows, two in the corners, one up top of the key. They're purposefully putting a big man here on ball. And Russell Westbrook is guarding Aaron Gordon, and you see them clear out the side. Because what we're going to see, and actually there's a little, I'm going to screen you a little bit and get your attention. What we see here is a guard setting a screen for a big man to cut to the rim here with the passer, instead of being from the perimeter, at the elbow. It's an easier passing angle. It's closer. And this action, given the proximity of the passer and the fact that the help defense is occupied will either get, if Monk, stays on his guy, this is a dunk or a layup. And so the Lakers have to switch this. So they switch that. So they ran this action with the passer there, with a big man up here getting a screen from a guard purposefully to get a big man on a guard. So that's what they're trying to do. And we see LeBron rotate over to help, and Avery Bradley, he's not paying attention. He should be sinking down. He's not sinking down. And so there's the breakdown. LeBron does what he's supposed to do. You have to bring that help because there's, big guy's got Monk buried down here. And there was a breakdown, but just a little bit of some of what's going into the game on both sides that it's easy to just not see, but it's good to ask questions about and try to learn from. And as you're going throughout this journey, if you get to a point where you have a question about a specific play or something like that, clip it, send it to me and say, hey, Tim, is this normal? What are they trying to do here? What's the thought process behind this? And I'm happy to comment. I'm happy to help. And this is something I do with content creators, writers, podcasters for other teams as well, that they'll DM me and say, hey, Tim, what's going on here? And I'll try to help explain it for them. So I'm happy to help here. And I think just having someone be able to tell you what that intent was when you're unsure can be really helpful. Next, let's talk about diagramming, because when we're talking basketball, the language of basketball can differ. I'm going to draw something up here and see, just think to yourself, what would I call this? So we've got our point guard here. He's got the ball. Well, I don't know. It's going to be a nice simple one. I'm not even going to draw everybody, but there's a defender here. We've got a screen. Point guard's going to dribble over and try to penetrate. And then one here who's under the rim is going to come up and set a screen for 5 to roll to the rim. And you might see them drive and throw that lob. This action right here can be called Spain. It can be called stack. There might be other names for it. The vernacular that you'll hear can differ based on who you're talking to. The same thing can be said for Chicago or zoom action, which is another action. And we see the Lakers run this, where we've got a down screen into a dribble handoff. The Lakers run plays like this. This is called Chicago action by some people. By others, this is called zoom action. And I was even on a green room one time and somebody asked me for, I think it was the Mavs, Hawks, or somebody. I forget who no, that doesn't make sense. Different conferences. The Mavs won a series against somebody last year in the playoffs, or the Hawks, I forget who. And they were asking me, do you see it making sense for this team to run zoom action for this player, and how would you defend it? And I had no idea what they're talking about. I know Chicago action. This is all over diagrams that I've, for plays I've drawn up. But it's just a different vernacular, and you'll hear different things from different people, like Spain versus stack. Stack is what NBA coaches call it. That's what NBA people generally call it. Spain is what you'll hear some journalists call it, and folks on Twitter a bit. But that can kind of tell you even, where people are coming from. It's like the dialects where certain people pronounce words different ways, saying pop versus soda or things like that. Can tell me a little bit about where you're from and what your background is. But at the end of the day, it's all basketball. And even though there are a bunch of different ways to say things, when we're diagramming, it's a pretty universal language. And diagrams are really important. They will be very important for this course. And I want to take this first lesson here to go over some of those basics of what means what. And to help us do this, I am going to pull up FastDraw here in a moment. FastDraw is a product from FastaModel, which is a company that sells software to coaches and coaching staffs. And I use this. This is where I drew up my playbooks for consulting or for teams I'm coaching on and things like that. Very nice and clean and easy. They've got some great features in there. It's going to cost you, $150 a year, something like that, $100 a year. So if you don't want to buy that, no big deal. I just took a screenshot of a court, and I have this free Ultimate Pen thing that I'm using here, and this is how I'm going to be drawing things. But before we hop into FastDraw, let's talk about just some of these basics. So there is a reason why when you see plays drawn up, they're not actually going to be X's and O's. There are no hugs and kisses here. You might see some X's, but If I just draw up a play with a bunch of circles and a bunch of X's, if there's, there's anything going on here, maybe there's a pop and a flare and this guy will cut over and he's going to set an exit screen. There's all kinds of stuff happening. It's really confusing to know who's who and what's happening, especially if, and you'll see this in Fast Draw, there's a next slide and a next slide, basically. There's more than one picture to the story because these don't mean anything. This 0 and this 0, drawing them are the same thing, but that's not meaningful. So instead, you'll see teams and coaches use numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And whenever I'm drawing numbers, and I think this is a pretty basic assumption you can make no matter who's diagramming something, these relate to positions. So 1's your point guard, 2's your shooting guard, 3's a small forward, 4's your power forward, 5's your center. And based on your personnel, like maybe 4 of these 5 guys are guards or something. Or maybe you have like a 4 and a 5 who are both like traditional bigs. That can differ. But this helps us keep track of who's who from play to, from slide to slide. And it also helps you when you're diagramming things, keep in mind what kinds of skill sets you have where. Now, on the defensive side, you will just see X's generally. Apologies for my, crappy drawing over here, but what you'll see in Fast Draw is you'll then see a little number, so X1 or X3. That tells us that that's 3's defender. So if there's a play and there's a ball screen, and then this X ends up on 1 and 5 is guarded by X1, there's a mismatch here. You know that this random X isn't just random generic defender. It was the defender who was guarding the point guard. So it's probably a small guy guarding your center. So there's just a level of value add by that additional clarity that is well worth the time of, it doesn't take you too much longer to draw numbers instead of circles. Speaking of circles, if you put a guy here and you put a guy here and you put a guy here, and you want to know who has the ball, we don't know. Who has the ball is who has the circle around them. That indicates that they are on ball. So keep that in mind as you're taking a look through these diagrams. And you know what? Let's just open up Fast Model for now. So I'll go ahead and hide that. We'll open up Fast Model. I will just scroll down to a random slide here and just place some players down. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here are those defenders. X1, X5, whatever it happens to be, and I can even throw some color in here to help you see where the defense is. Now, we've talked about who's who. We've talked about who has the ball, so we'll give him the ball. See, there's a circle around him. This is a universal thing here. And now let's talk about movement and passing, because this is really important. And if you don't understand this, it's going to be really confusing reading diagrams. So let's pass from 1 to 2. The way we do that is with a dotted line. That's a pass from 1 to 2. If we want to have somebody cut or move, we'll say 4 is going to move. We're going to have a solid line here. And right now it's straight, but it can be, we can have this guy running around. This isn't going to be the most sensical, but we can throw some curves in. And this is just him cutting. This is 4 cutting up, 1 passing to 2. If we want to, for example, have a screen, you're going to see that shown with this like flat line at the end. So it's almost like a T here, a big long T. And again, these can be curved. The end of the line tells you if it's player movement for like a cut or if it is a screen. And if a player is dribbling, you've got a nice squiggly line, which Fast Model does a bit better than I do trying to draw myself. So if I hit Fast Build here, it looked at what I drew and it moved those players appropriately. So 5 set the screen. Now they're over here. 3 cut to the corner. He's in the corner. 4 moved up. 1 passed to 2, and then 2 dribbled and drove to the elbow, 2 now has the ball at the elbow. So, I mean, this isn't a coherent play, but if we're just looking at, how to dictate, how to illustrate different things, you'll see that's the case. When you're drawing a pass, again, it's this dotted line. When there's a lob in, let's say this guy's fronted and we want to lob the ball into him, I will generally do that, and you'll see others do this as well, as a curved dotted line to indicate that we're passing, kind of a looping over the defender kind of pass. Another thing to know, we'll give this guy the ball, is if we're drawing a dribble handoff, there is a specific icon for that. So let's say he's dribbling. Oops, we'll get rid of that one. We've got a drive here. This double cross or T icon, that indicates a dribble handoff. So if we, again, fast build, it didn't recognize it, but this should have 4 with the ball, and then maybe 1 will clear out. So that's what that can look like. We'll clear that. We'll clear that. We'll clear this. So let's just do, a quick little quiz here. This line, this line, this line, and this line. Here are the four ways we're going to show movement or passing or screening. So take yourself, take a second and think about, all right, which one of these is which? Which one of these, think to yourself, is a pass? All right, it was the dotted line. Which one of these is a player cutting? It'll be the solid line with the arrow at the end. Now, which one of these is a player driving on ball? They've got the ball and they're dribbling. That'll be the squiggly line. And then the last one that we're left with right here is a player screening. In the direction of that flat line is where the player is screening. And then dribble handoff is the double cross here. You'll also see sometimes I'll add some shading in. I don't really do this when I'm just using the digital whiteboard with on here, but it is something that I will use to highlight specific things when drawing in Fast Draw. So we will go ahead and clear that. So we've talked about numbers versus X's and O's, types of line endings, dribble handoffs, when to highlight things. Now, before we get into gaps, which I want to talk about, let's talk about offensive positioning. And so this is a time when during the live session, I had folks, submit ideas for places on the court, and it popped up in a word cloud. What we're going to do instead is we are just going to go ahead and start naming some, and we're going to work our way along the perimeter and along the 3-point line. And so we've got a corner over here. We've got a corner over there. You'll see at the NBA level, there's this break in the 3-point line. From like here to this lane line extended, this area right here, we're going to refer to as the wing. So we've got 2 wings. Now this lane line, so here's the paint. We've got our lane line extended as if we were to just draw lines out this way. And then we've got our foul line. Our foul line extended goes this way. This isn't drawn on the court, but it's a good reference point. Right here, this lane line extended, this is going to describe the slot. So we've got 2 slots. We've got the top of the key, which is, dead center outside the 3-point line. The key is this right here. And in high school basketball, the line actually goes along right here. But because it's the NBA, the 3-point line is a little bit further. It's a little further away, but this is the top of the key. So we've got our top of the key, our slots, our wings, our corners. You might see, a guy standing here or standing here. I'm going to refer to that as the wing. Now, if we work our way inside, we've got a spot down here that you'll hear referred to as a few different things. There's the short corner, or the dunker spot. You've got two of these, so one over there, one over here. And so this is a spot that in today's NBA, you'll generally see bigs, or the Lakers will put guards down there, Russell Westbrook or THT or Avery Bradley or whoever. Just kind of in it. They're not at the post. They're not at the block trying to post up. They're just kind of lingering here. And let's say there's a drive coming in, they'll then cut to the rim and present themselves as a dump off option. There's some strategy behind who you place where, but we'll get to that on another occasion. For now, just know this is the short corner. This is the dunker spot. Fun fact, when you hear people talking about how, the mid-range game is dead or the game is changing, it's not that players are taking fewer pull-up mid-range shots. The LeBrons, the Kawhis, the Steph Currys, they're still taking those shots. The mid-range shots that have gone away are these shots basically right here from big guys who are spotting up here. Like, let's say Pau Gasol, he would just stand over here and you kick it over to him and he'd shoot. In today's NBA, let's say for his brother Marc Gasol last year, he's spotting up in the corner. He's not spotting up there. Because even though the corner's further away, and as we get further from the rim, just universally for just about every single player, their field goal percentage will go down because there's the three-point line here. This shot is worth 3, this one's worth 2. So even at a lower percentage, it's worth more points. So we'll generally see those bigs space out further for the higher value shot. And then also because that draws their defender further away from being able to rotate and defend the rim. So we've got our short corner, our dunker spot. We've got our low post or block. And that's, I don't know if it's going to let me move that. That's down here. Then we've got our mid post and our high post / elbow. That is this right angle right here. We've got our elbow, our high post, our mid post area, and then our low post. We've got the restricted area. This is our hoop. And then across the free throw line, a good additional term to be aware of is the nail. And the reason for the naming of that is if you go to, your local high school or your Gold's Gym or wherever, you'll probably see right in the middle of the free throw line. And it's there on purpose to tell you where the middle of the free throw line is, underneath all of the polishing and finishing and whatever they have on top of the wood court. You're going to see a little nail. Or maybe you'll see a little dot or a marker or something. That's telling you where the middle of the free throw line is. So when you're lining up for free throws, you can line up at the same spot every time. And it gives you a little bit of a baseline. You don't have to eyeball it from 15 feet away or however far away it is to set yourself up for free throws. The nail will be an important place from a help defensive standpoint. When we talk about, defending a drive, this is a place that perimeter defenders will sink down to cut off a drive, and then they'll recover to the perimeter. All right, let's see. Let me make sure I've covered everything. Yep. Okay, so this is, and over here again, let me get to drawing. Low block, or low post block. We've got our mid post and our high post elbow. So this right here, these are the places to know. In the low block, I could probably have put that down a little bit further. This is what to know. Here, this line right here is our free throw line extended. Right here we have our lane line extended. Good places to know. If we're to describe what's happening on a play, it's important to be able to tell folks, where the player went to. He went from corner to corner, or from the dunker spot, he flashed up to the slot, or there was a drive from the top of the key that was cut off at the elbow for a kick out to the wing, pass to the corner, who fed the low post. Being able to just have these as part of your vernacular is important. Now let's take a look. Let me show you an example of helping at the nail. Here we go. More Lakers Nuggets. Did you see it? Watch Russell Westbrook on this play. So he's guarding Aaron Gordon. There's a drive. Malik Monk's beat. There's a ball screen. There's more of a dribble handoff. And Monk is behind Morris. He needs some help. and you can help from one of these guys down here. But what we see instead is Russell Westbrook go from the elbow, and he hops over. He's right in the middle of the free throw line, and that causes Morris to stop his drive. And I mean, you could say these guys do as well, but this help is what we're identifying here. He's helping at the nail, and then he's gonna he generally, if Morris even looked that way, we're gonna see Russ close back out to the perimeter. But that's what helping at the nail looks like. And again, we'll talk about help rotations next session, but for now, I just want you to be familiar with the location on the court. Okay, so next let's go over gaps. Attacking gaps is important in basketball. It is something that is rarely talked about. And the way I'm going to explain it today, I'm not even sure. In fact, I don't believe I've ever heard it explained this way. So maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this is just really helpful for me. Hopefully it's helpful for you. You will want to be familiar with triangles and types of triangles. So hopefully you have a little bit of geometry experience. But if not, no worries. There's nothing super complicated here. Gaps. Let's talk about gaps. The idea of a gap is, it's basically how far away are your players positioned on the perimeter. And the general idea here is you have single gaps, double gaps, and triple gaps. And the bigger the gap is, the easier it'll be to drive. And so why is that? Let's show an example. If we have player 1 here, he's on ball. Because of that circle, we know he's on ball. He's going to try to drive to the rim. Thinking back to the play that we just watched, we had Russell Westbrook at the elbow help over to the nail. In this situation, this player X3 is likely going to try to cut this drive off, even if 1 beats his man. And then if 1 kicks it out to 3, X3 is pretty close and able to recover. So there's not a huge advantage here for the offense. Even if you do win on ball, either you have to go through an extra layer of perimeter defense to even try to get to the rim, or you're going to have to be, you're going to be cut off and you're going to have to kick it out. And based on how close these guys are standing, the kick out recovery isn't going to be too much of an issue for the defense. That's because we have a single gap here. We're looking at a single gap, and generally you don't want to be driving single gaps. The way to know a gap is a single gap is we're going to create a triangle. This is our yellow triangle right here between the rim, the on-ball player, and the next player on the perimeter. And then we want to look at this angle of the triangle. And so right here, this is an acute angle. It's less than 90 degrees. And that tells us that we've got a single gap. If, for example, 3 were to cut through and he's hanging out in the dunker spot, his man follows him. And now we've got the rim stays where it is. This guy stays where it is. The next offensive player is all the way here in the corner. This is a bigger gap. And this is a double gap. And we know this is a double gap because we have a right triangle right here. And if we are now looking at 1 driving on X1, and this is an important thing because there will be times, and we've seen the Lakers have advantages. They'll get mismatches. They'll have a bad defender guarding LeBron, but based on positioning, the defense is able to help him recover. When you create this double gap, there can't be that stunt. There can't be that help to cut off the drive on the perimeter. There's no one to help. And if X5 were to help, the kick out here, particularly because he's in the corner, there's no one else to rotate over, but because it's a double gap, the distance that this defender needs to cover to stop you effectively takes them away from being able to recover to their man. So that is what we're looking at with a double gap versus a single gap. And I'll go ahead and put them back. Now let's take a look at a triple gap. In a triple gap situation, we have greater than a 90-degree angle. We now have an obtuse angle, as we'd call it in geometry. We still have the rims where it is. This next player's over here. The on-ball player, instead of being here, is even further over. And so now, instead of X1, if they're beat, having only from, they only have to get from here to get back in front, they have to defend this whole space. And one, instead of having to, let's say they're driving this way, and we've got, where's X2? All right, there's X2. Instead of X2 being right here, and instead of 1 having to, get into this gap before he even gets to this player, he has all this space to go laterally, and then turn the corner. And that gives him more of an opportunity to beat his man. Triple gaps are the best to drive. You have to be purposeful about creating them. This generally isn't, you're not going to call this great spacing for the most part. There's no way to drive this way, but you're creating on purpose this 1v1, you're elevating your isolation game by creating a situation where X1's kind of on an island until you get to the rim. So once one gets to the rim, we might see, a rotation over and this guy flashes for a lob, or he flashes, he covers him, and then we've got a kick out for a three, or he helps over, and then it's a kick out, one pass and a shot. So, there are ways to, really do damage once you get to the rim. And as a defense, you just want to prevent guys from getting to the rim at all. And what we might see, in addition to driving gaps, is popping into gaps. If we think over here, we've got 2 setting a ball screen and then popping. Let's say both of these guys are guarding X1. They hit him on the pop. Let's say this is a ghost screen or something. The recovery here isn't all that far. And again, you've got a help defender that can easily get back to their man. And what you can try to do to create this a bigger gap is cut this guy as this is happening to remove that. So then, there's more space here. The help defense has to go further. If we look at a triple gap, that is quite an advantage. This guy has all the space to pop into. And then again, your help defense has to fully commit and leave a guy open if they're going to stop you. So triple gaps are advantageous in a lot of ways. In general, you want to drive gaps, you want to pop into gaps, and you want to be purposeful about creating gaps. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So at least for today, we're going to speak of 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 different major cuts that will create gaps for us. And so the first one that we're going to talk about is a 45-degree cut. And I promise this is the last bit of geometry we'll have for today. But so 90 degrees would be this way. 45 degrees is half of that. And so 1 passes to 2, and then 1 clears out. 2 now, from here to the rim to there, that's at least a double gap, probably a triple gap. And so they can drive the space, and there's so much more space to drive than if they were just given the ball and were trying to drive this way. So that is a 45-degree cut. We sometimes hear this called a brush screen or a blur screen, because what you'll see is with the defenders involved as well, this guy passes and then cuts, and then as he's cutting, you want to drive this way, and you might have some traffic here that just slightly gets in this man's way, kind of like a screen in, not a screen, but what do they call it, a rub in football, where they're just trying to create traffic. They're not allowed to set screens like you can in basketball, but they're just trying to get in the way and make it so this guy has to go all the way around or chase all the way around, and that creates the advantage on the drive. So that is our 45-degree cut, or our brush screen. A through cut, pretty simple cut. It's not really a scoring cut because one doesn't really cut all the way to the rim. They're just passing over, and then they just clear all the way to this side. And again, we're creating this space here. From him to the rim to him, we now have, if he's here, a double gap. If he's over here, a triple gap. That's a through cut. A fan cut is similar to a player fading to the corner on just a drive. In the reason that can be effective, let's say 2 just has the ball. If one's defender's here and they're trying to help on this drive, they might stunt over and try to recover. You have this guy fade, so if they stunt over, oops, now I've got to go all the way to the corner. That's tough. This fan cut here is 1 passing to 2 and then immediately cutting as we're creating this gap to drive. And then we've got a Euro cut, or Euro dribble handoff. DHO stands for dribble handoff, and that's why we have that dribble handoff icon, where you dribble in front of someone, you pitch it back to them, and then, again, there's some traffic here, and you get out of the way, and kind of in your wake, you drive right behind it. And that can create advantages. So, again, 4 cuts, pretty simple. Our 45-degree cut, or our brush screen, our through cut, our fan cut, our Euro dribble handoff. These are 4 ways to create gaps to then be driving into or popping into or otherwise attacking. Next concept we're going to talk about is alignments. And again, this is very simple stuff. We're just setting the stage here for what we're going to build off of with the next sessions. But for right now, talking about alignments, here are some of the basic ones that you'll see, particularly at the NBA level. So we have 5 out, which is 5 players outside the three-point line. Anytime you hear like out or in, it's referring to the three-point line. So 3 out, 2 in, you're going to have 2 inside the three-point line, 3 outside the three-point line. 5 out means everybody's outside the three-point line. And this is assuming you have shooting, because if you don't have shooting, the defense is going to look like this. Assuming you have some shooting, this pulls the defenders out, and you're going to have some space to drive. And let's say for whatever reason you are to get to the rim, you beat your guy. Help coming over from the weak side, and then this guy rotating over. There's just a lot of great spacing here, and it makes for easier conversion on a created advantage through an open shot. We'll talk about defensive rotations next time, but just know that 5-out offense is great for shooting. It's great for driving and kicking. It's, just in general, a nice basic setup that if you have the shooting to enable it, you want to go for it. If 5 isn't a shooter and this guy's standing here, it's less effective to run. So you only really run this when you have the shooting for it, but if you have the shooting for it, it's a nice setup to have. Horns is another common alignment, and I think people can sometimes get confused and think this is a play. No, it's where guys are standing. And you're going to have the ball at the top of the key. We've got players at the elbows and players in the corners. Usually you've got bigs at the elbows, but you might see something different. You might see, like for the Suns, for example, they'll stick Devin Booker here, and they'll run a little cross screen play, pass him the ball, and then try to get him attacking downhill with the guy rolling to the rim and shooters in the corners. Simple, good offense. Generally, you're going to see the bigs at the elbows. And there's a lot that you can do out of this. Maybe you'll get 2 ball screens, and this guy will try to drive. Maybe you've got a flare for one of your screeners. Maybe you've got some Spain or stack action. Maybe the stack action is coming this way for him to roll, and this guy doesn't. Maybe he just spaces out. There's a whole lot you can do out of this. We see this used a good bit if we are trying to get some action to the corners. So we'll run that zoom action or that Chicago action. I didn't do it the way I wanted. We're going to get an angle with the curve. So, cut in a little bit. And then come on out. And then, we'll throw in our little dribble handoff icon. And then maybe you've got some stuff going on the weak side. You got a pin down over here while this guy's trying to turn the corner, get to the rim. You can do all kinds of things. It's really easy to get attack from the corners with this setup because you've got your bigs lifted. So if 3 were to get the ball and be driving baseline, these bigs, they have to sink all the way to the rim to defend it. So that can be helpful. But we'll see a lot of pin downs. You'll see a good number of flare screens. I think this is, it's horns. It's harder to drive straight through the middle because you got players here, but assuming you're using them in smart ways, there's a lot you can do out of this. You've got spacing, and it makes reads a bit simple, especially if you're able to get a ball screen going this way, and then this guy's diving to the rim, and this defender goes out with him. You're only really reading one defender if you've got an aggressive hedge. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't want to confuse anybody. Just know that horns is a pretty good setup, a pretty good alignment. You're going to see a good bit. All right, 1-4 high. You might also see 1-4 low, but not really at the NBA level. 1-4 low would look like this. 1-4 high is up here at the free throw line, or the free throw line extended. And this is a setup I love. I love this alignment. You will get a lot of easy offense passing to the wings and then driving down the wings, just like with horns, because there's nobody down here. It's a good setup to get some hammer flare action. It's a really nice, easy setup to get Allen Iverson cuts, which are when players will cut from wing to wing across the elbows, and you got some screens here. Maybe then you pass it to him. He catches and he turns the corner. And maybe this guy like clears through or something, or maybe he cuts through, sets a back screen here, and this guy cuts through him. There's a whole lot you can do, a lot of counters, a lot of fun plays and actions and quick hitters you can have out of that Allen Iverson cuts, just motion. This is also a great setup if you have a good passing big man that, even if they're not a post scorer, this is a good setup to have them facilitating either dribble at someone and create a dribble handoff, or, they've got the ball and we're going to get a split cut and they're just reading it and passing it to the shooter or the cutter. Just, in general, you're not going to post up a whole lot out of this look, but it is a good look if you have facilitating bigs, or you want to run dribble handoff actions, or you want to get guys catching and driving downhill. Next, we have 4-out, 1-in, which is a pretty basic thing. You'll see this a lot at the college and high school levels. This is like the base, offense that like Villanova is going to run and a bunch of other teams. It's all out of this specific alignment. Each of those teams, they do different things. They have their own principles, but it's out of this alignment. And again, 4-out means we have 4 outside the three-point line. 1-in means we have 1 inside the three-point line. And you can have, you can run this with a good playmaking big as well. Generally, if they're a good post player, we'll still see the Warriors run this with like Kevon Looney playmaking. And again, they're trying to get split cuts in different actions where guys are cutting towards the rim, and the fact that the pass is coming from this angle rather than all the way out here makes it easier to hit a cut. If you're going to cut, having the passer be closer to the basket and have an angle that's a little bit better is going to make that cut more likely to be successful. But 4-out, 1-in offense, you can do all kinds of stuff. I mean, I could just draw all sorts of things where we're passing, we've got a flex cut, and then we'll get a down screen over here. I don't know. You can do a whole lot out of this. It's a pretty wide open, basic alignment, but there's a whole lot you can do with it. Then we have 3-out, 2-in, which you'll see not much at the NBA level because this kind of clogs up the paint. If you are going to see this, it'll be more like one guy at the dunker spot, the other guy posting up maybe. And apologies for my voice being a little raspy, but this is another one where you've got two bigs that can't shoot, basically, is what you're doing here. And you want to feed the post, or you want to have guys in rebounding position. It makes it harder to drive. If you are going to drive, you're going to want to bring them up and run ball screen actions, and then have these guys doing stuff, and then maybe, lift him from the corner to the wing. Things like that, where you're manufacturing space by using screening on or off ball. And maybe, for example, we'll see, X5, he'll come in to help here, and we've got X2 guarding his man, so 5's going to set this screen. I didn't get the angle I wanted, but 5's going to set this screen for 2, and then we can pass it and kick it out to 2 when we're driving, because this guy's stopping the drive, and then we just kick it out to here for this pin and flare screen, and 2 stuck here on the screen, and it's an open shot. So I don't know. I'm just kind of screwing around, but there's a lot you can do out of just about every one of these alignments. Certain actions work better with certain alignments, and we'll talk about that once we get to those. But just in general, keep in mind the strengths and weaknesses of certain things. The more guys you have on the perimeter, the easier it's going to be to drive. And in order to use those alignments where there are more guys on the perimeter, you need more shooting. If 4 and 5 are shooters, you probably don't want to have them both inside the three-point line because this hurts your spacing. All right, the last alignment, and again, these last two you're not going to see at the NBA level much, if at all. This is called 5 high. You might hear it called like a 2-guard front. You've got a big man at the nail, 2 guys at the wings, 2 at the slots. Michigan would run this with John Beilein at the college level. We don't see this much at the NBA level, so I'm not going to draw up much here. But These, again, are some major alignments to be aware of. I'd know 1-4 high. I'd know 4 out, 1 in. I'd know horns. I'd know 5 out. If you know those 4, that's going to be probably 90% of how we're drawing plays up, unless it's maybe like an out of bounds play. You'll use some funky alignments sometimes, but those are the basic NBA alignments to know of. And if we even think back to some of the clips I've played so far, they were out of these alignments. All right. Last thing, shell defense. We've talked about positions on offense in terms of spots on the court. It's important to know so that you're able to understand in spot abnormalities. It's important to have a baseline of where defenders should be. When you're lining up in 5 out, is the defense going to look like this? Probably not. That would be very unlikely. I would say you're not playing good defense if you're playing defense like this. Maybe you're a super aggressive team and you're guarding up the line a bit, 1 pass away, and you're trying to deny these passes, but you're still not going to have these guys, hugged up on their offensive players. That doesn't make sense. So let's take a moment and talk about just general shell defense and what you're trying to do with it. The shell, it's called shell defense because you've got your. I have no idea why it's called shell defense. I'm assuming it's like a turtle shell, and you're trying to protect the rim. But it is just the general defensive setup that if you're going to build out your defensive system at any level as a coach, if you're a new coach for a team, you're going to start with this. You're going to say, instill behavior of where should you be based on where the ball is. When the ball's at the top of the key, if you're 1 pass away, you're going to be in position to try to deflect the pass. You don't want to, overplay per se. And some teams will, but in general, you want to be up on your guy 1 pass away. If you're 2 passes away, so to the corner, you don't want to be all the way up on your guy. And why is that? That is because the closer you are to your player, there are 2 things. 1, it's easier to get back cut. And right now, the risk reward of playing up on him doesn't make sense. And then 2, it takes you out of position to help. So if we've got a drive here and you need to help, you've got way more ground to cover, and that you're not going to be able to cover that ground. So from here, if a drive were to happen, you have plenty of time to get in position. And we're not going to talk about, specific cuts or actions or ball screens or all that much, but just where is the ball? Where should you be standing? If the ball goes to the wing, who's 1 pass away? Corner's 1 pass away, so we're going to go up. Top of the key's 1 pass away. Over here's 2 passes away, so we're going to sink in. And you can use the lane lines as a good baseline here for where to stand. So these guys on the weak side, they're going to stay on the lane line. And for this pass 2 passes away, or this one's more of a skip pass, you're going to have a pretty long looping pass to get over there. Oops, wrong one. Have a nice curvy, long skip pass. You've got plenty of time to recover to that. If we're talking high school basketball, you've got even more time to recover because the shooters are worse and the pass is probably going to be worse. But at the NBA level, LeBron James can, zip a laser into a guy's shooting pocket. So you can't be too far over. But we've got 1 pass away, you're, in position to defend. 2 passes away, you're more help. In, skip pass, you're anticipating help. Now, if we have the ball in the corner, same idea here. 1 pass away, get in position. 2 passes away, we're going to sink down to the lane lines. On this side, same idea. And you want to be, kind of along this line. So you don't want to play too high up because you've created this cutting lane here. You want to be in between the ball and your man and the basket. Always be between your man and the basket, but have where the ball is in mind as well. So maybe shade over a little. And then this guy over here, if we're talking high school basketball, when I was taught in middle school, when guys can't shoot well, we're standing under the rim. We're in position to help here. We're not trying to defend at the rim. We're trying to, if a drive happens, we're stopping you before you get to the lane. At the NBA level, the shooting's good enough that there's a defense of 3 seconds. So you're going to see guys kind of, shuffle back and forth and be in position to help on a drive, but not get, a 3-second call and not get too far away from their man. If you're helping all the way on this side, you're out of position. You will not be able to recover to this pass. If you're over here, you're not going to be in position to help at the rim. So the lane line's a good guide. And you can, really, this is the baseline. You can adjust from there. If a guy's a great shooter, maybe you stand a little bit further over. You're still not going to be on him, but maybe a couple steps over. If they're an awful shooter, you're going to be more willing to get to the rim. If we're talking college, high school, where there's no defensive 3 seconds, then you can stand under the rim. But for the NBA, this lane line's a good guide. So let's say the ball gets skipped over here. X4 is one pass away. X1's one pass away. X3 isn't. X5 isn't. Ball goes to the corner. One pass away. This guy sinks down. And hopefully this is making sense. If we are setting up with a different alignment, let's say we're going to stick 5 there. We'll stick 4 and 3 in the corners, 1 and 2 at the top. We'll give 1 the ball. If they're over here, there's their man. X2 is kind of one pass away. Same with X4. X5, you don't want to give up a lob. X3, you're going to sink down. Ball's in the corner. Get in position, get over here, sink down. You sink down, you're ready to rotate, and you've got someone right there behind you. So when we see the Lakers, maybe Bron's posting up over here, sometimes we'll see teams set up like this. And based on what we know about shell defense, X5 is too far away from his man for this to be normal. If this were normal, they'd be over here. And so we can identify this as an abnormality, as, I've been calling it a box coverage, and see it as the exploitable thing that it is. Have him set the screen, skip past 3, or have him flash to the rim, and then this player either has to go with them or stay home. And, there are ways to attack this. But the key thing to know for today is, you want to be able to recognize when something different is happening. All right, so let me get back to my 5 out. We'll give 1 the ball. Hopefully this gives you, just an introductory sense of that shell defense. And then the way you'll then see this play out as you're installing a defense when you're, teaching real people is, all right, next practice, we're going to pass and then cut. And then as they fill up, where do guys stand? How does that change things? And then we're going to introduce, all right, pick and roll. Where do guys stand? How does that happen? If there's a flare screen, how do we defend that? Just you add on a little at a time, and we'll somewhat do the same with this course. But this is just basic shell defense. All right, let's see. I believe I have one more clip for you. Oh, actually, I forgot to show you popping into the gap. So here is a pick and pop. And because we've got this acute angle here, Avery Bradley's in position. So between, who is this? Ingles, I think that's Donovan Mitchell in the rim. Here to here to here from, let's see, what does that look like? Let's clear this out. We've got 1 as the ball. The kick out guy's here. This is an acute angle, less than 90 degrees. That's a single gap. So when whoever it is popping into this area, this defender is going to be able to help and recover. And it won't be too difficult. That's going to make it harder for that pop to work. So as we see this play out, notice that. Just one example. Don't want to make too much of it, but just talking conceptually, that's what that can look like. And if we wanted to make more of that pop, what we might do is have Donovan Mitchell set it down screen or cut to the rim and take Avery Bradley out of the equation. Because if these two guys don't exist, this pop isn't seeing any help towards it until Ariza or who is this, or Johnson recovers to it. So especially if Ingles can take one extra dribble, let this popper get over to the crypto logo, and these two guys aren't there, that is a wide open shot. So just cutting to create that gap can be really important. All right, now looking at some shell defense, if we are looking at this play right here, we've got one pass away, he's in position, two passes away, he's sunk down a little bit. Dwight's kind of inside, so Jokic is in a good position. We got the on-ball defender, but look at Russ and look at Russ's defender. If we were seeing normal shell defense, this guy would be down here. So this, as a coach, you see this and you say, all right, they're stunting or they're helping over, they're loading up, they're trying to build this wall here to make LeBron James a jump shooter. And there are ways to exploit that, but for now, we just want to be recognizing that that is different, that is abnormal. It's going to make it hard for LeBron to do his job. And there you go, jump shot. Let's take a look at some shell defense. Where are guys in relation to where they should be? So Avery Bradley actually just got a handoff, so his man is chasing over. We've got right there. Russ is on the weak side. His man is two passes away. So he is, instead of being right here on Russ, he's sunk down. He's at the low post, at the block. That's good normal shell defense. Up here, he's kind of in position to help if he wants to and then recover. He's not too far away from his man. If he's standing over here, a kick out to Monk is going to be an open three. So we've got just normal defense, not too much to make of this. Second example, let's take a look, see what we're seeing. Again, so he's got the ball, we'll put the circle around him. His on-ball defender's on him. We actually have a switch here. Avery Bradley's on Jokic, one pass away, so he's in position. And then on the weak side, see how they're along the lane line? Whether the guy's at the block, in the corner, at the wing, they're not going further than here. And you'll have Bron ready to help over and Russ hopefully ready to sink down and Monk ready to zone up these two players. But their baseline is starting at that wing. At that lane line. All right. So I believe that is just about it for today. To, I guess, close it all out, to put a nice bow around this, as simple as this all is, it's important to have a strong foundation in what should be happening. And when play calling, you don't just call plays to call plays. You're calling plays to run specific concepts, to put the defense in compromising positions. And to do so, you need to understand position. You need to understand where guys should be. If we're drawing up a play, and I've got my ball here, and we got 5, 3, 2, 4. If I'm diagramming a play, and we'll say the ball's over here, I'm not gonna draw up a pin down to be on a defender right here, because there's no reason for the defender to be there if the ball's over here. Two passes away, that defender's gonna be here. So I need to draw up the screen to be here, and that changes angles completely. Instead of this guy being able to probably curl this, if there's someone going over, I'm looking more for this player to just go up and use this more as a pin and flare screen. So it just, in terms of how you're going about your business, it's important to know where guys should be. Along with that, I guess I'd say for now, you should now have a good sense for how to, just diagram some pretty basic stuff in terms of just, passing, screening, dribble handoffs, cutting. You should have a sense for where defenders should be just in general. And it doesn't have to be 5 out. It doesn't have to be 4 out, 1 in, but keep in mind 1 pass away versus 2 passes away versus that skip pass. The latter two at the NBA level being pretty similar. And, for future lessons, we're going to see this evolve. And we're going to get to the point where we say, all right, what does a soft hedge coverage give us? Where's the weakness in that? Why do you use it, first of all? And when you use it, what does it give up? And then how do we exploit that? Or we know, okay, next week we're going to talk about defensive rotations and we're going to understand how tagging works and who's supposed to tag. So then from a play calling standpoint, we're doing things either to exploit the tag happening or prevent it from happening. So just, you want to be thinking steps ahead, and in order to do so, you have to understand a baseline of what should be in order to manipulate it or recognize it when it isn't that. So next time we are going to cover early offense, we're going to cover defensive rotations, and I believe flare screens, and I'll try to keep it just to 3 concepts because I know these can go a little bit long, but hopefully you got a lot out of this. Feel free to send me feedback from a text standpoint, from a how I'm explaining things standpoint. Apologies, this is a recording, this isn't live, so we didn't have the interactive components, but if you're able to make it to the live portions of this, which you can do via being in the courtside tier on the server, it's an even more enriching experience. We're able to have more dialogue as it's happening, more Q&A, more interactive, like quick checks of, quick knowledge checks. And, hopefully you're getting as much out of this as you possibly can. And by the end of this, I promise you, you're going to be at a point where you're going to be understanding this stuff at a different level. You're going to notice it and be able to understand it in game and say, oh, you know what? I saw them run this flare screen because of X, or they did this to exploit Y. And it's going to be really impressive. So until then, that is all for today. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.